Hello and welcome to Talk Junkie. My name is Justin Perkins. Today I'm going to be kind of answering an email that I got. This thing's pretty new, and I don't have a ton of listeners. I know that, and I don't have a ton of people, but there are people actually kind of engaging and asking things, and a lot of it's from people I know. Obviously that happens, but this was from somebody I didn't. It was Barry M. something. I'm sorry. I'm been on the road and don't have the email with me. If I get a chance, I'll pause it and look it up before we get off here. But the question was about being a self-published author, and then there's been a lot of other questions I've had since I wrote my book, not pertaining to this show, about writing books and stuff. And I sat with another local author, Boris Sloan, back before Christmas. I was at the hospital seeing my grandmother, and he was there, and he had wrote a book, and he had published it, and it had cost him a lot to get it published and things of that nature. So today I'm going to kind of just do an all-encompassing thing about me writing the book, what got me to do it, how I did it, and all that, and kind of cover a lot of it. May end up being a two-parter to keep these things short enough to where you can kind of listen to them in one go. But that was another question that come through, is how do I lay these podcasts out? I don't sit down and write hardly anything down like the Music and Memories one. I did that one. I kind of wrote down some highlights, things I wanted to remember, and I may take a note here and there, but I just do these off the top of my head, so that's why I don't know how long they are. I just hit record and I start talking, and what comes out comes out. So that's why I never know at the beginning of one how long it's going to be. But with the book, and me writing the book, to kind of, every interview I done when the book first come out, those were the questions: is how this happened, what drove me to do it, what was the motivation. So I'm going to touch on that first. When I was a teenager, I started writing, quite a bit, mostly poetry and short stories. Well, exclusively, really, poetry and short stories, and in music, writing songs and stuff of that nature, or at least attempting to. That probably started, in maybe around 14, something in there. As a real young child, around 8, 9, I would draw and do comic type stuff to a small degree. Not more drawing, and not very well. Just random little things. But when I did get my first computer, which was around that time, probably 9, something like that, I would produce my own newspaper all the time, but it would extensively be based around UFOs and ghosts, things of that nature, But so that the drive to do it was always there, just in different formats. But when I got fairly serious about it, was coming into to about 13, 14 years old. I wrote some little funny, goofy stuff up to then. Like I like to write comedy songs and funny stuff like that, and comedy stuff up to that point. I can remember in 8th grade writing, I had started out as an assignment for school, and it just something I kept doing, writing these funny stories about this detective that was a pig, and it was just a total rip-off of it was a total rip-off of two things. It was a total rip-off of Dragnet, which I'd watched with my grandfather when I was younger, just kind of like a comic version of that, but also mixed in with this show that used to come on USA. It's like an adult cartoon with this detective that was a duck. I can't remember the name of the show, but it was kind of a mixture of those two things as it went on. But when I hit 14 is when the poetry kind of come in, and it didn't initially come in as poetry to me. It came in as songs, as music. I look at lyrics as poetry, and I wasn't writing these poems really in the sense of, I wasn't, I was big on Poe at that time. I found Poe probably around 7th grade. Well, it was in 7th grade, and become slightly obsessed with Poe. But I didn't look at my, excuse me, it's early, it's before 6 a.m. I didn't look at my writings in the same vein as Poe. I looked at them much differently. It was much different. It wasn't as good. That's one thing, and I didn't have that special touch with words. But a lot of it was also structured more like a song, and a lot of songs. The structure's obvious to me that it's a song, and you've got and there's an order, verse, chorus, it wasn't until writing for a while that two things kind of happened. I made a transition to it being purely poetry. Was the first thing. Is okay, the songs I'm writing are not going to match the word, or not, the words are not going to match the type of music. I'm sorry, it is early. It's not going to match the type of music that my band is playing. And, I'm also getting enthralled into the ideal of poetry. And here is the opportunity to change the style and format to kind of match what I'm moving into, and it started to morph into something different, and it changed the layout of things, and moving into probably 16 or 17, a couple things. I'd started listening to some different music and stuff, and especially listening to Deftones. The song structure is not the same, and it lyrically, if you take these lyrics and lay them out, sometimes you can't tell that that's a song. So, at that time, even though I think that influence is left, because I kind of found myself, that influence was very prevalent in my poetry, and plus I'd done some work at in high school for the portfolio deal and all this, and I'd started this short story called Dear Ann about this soldier who goes off to Vietnam, and he's writing back to his girlfriend or his wife. They got married before he left, named Dear Ann, or named Ann, and the story starts off as a letter, and the story is actually a collection of letters, and I didn't really put an ending to it as much, and then I go back and revisit it, and it's more than they kind of wanted lengthwise for the portfolio. So I continue to work on this, and he sends the letters back, and he sends the last letter, and before she can open the last letter and read it, she's greeted by a military guy at her door that tells her he's dead, and she waits a long time to read the letter, and then blah 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 blah. But that kind of opened up a desire for storytelling, which had always been there. But I'm a very oral person. I like storytelling. I like, when I was in grade school, I was on a speech team. I did improvisational duo, things like that. One of my favorite things was extemporaneous speaking, and not necessarily because I like the subjects or I like these things, but it gave me the opportunity to do something solely created by me. And everybody says do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Well, this is what I love. I love to talk. I love to do the podcast. I love to speak. I love to speak in front of groups of people. When my book first came out, and the opportunities that were afforded to me to speak to these students and these different programs and stuff, and and to do these radio interviews and all these things, that was very rewarding to me, because that, more so than probably writing the book, allowed me to express myself. So I'm a very, I have a very heavy emphasis on orally being able to do things, and so this kind of desire to write stories and tell stories that really come from this short story from this came all of a sudden kind of out, and it combined these two passions of wanting to act things out and wanting to be an actor, I guess, to some degree, and wanting to say these things, to writing them down, and so I took this from this one from this one project of writing this Dear Ann, that kind of morphed into this desire to write plays and very heavily dialogue based things. I don't do well with structures. There's a new short story in a book I'm working on that really just reads like stage direction and lines for a play or a movie or something. It doesn't read like a short story. That's how I think, and that's how things generally come out. So I may actually still try that and put it in. It's a sci-fi based thing, and it may actually end up being in this new book. Looking at it, it's hard for me to tell how that's going to translate to people, but it very likely could be in the new book. But back to Dear Ann, this writing this in high school kind of triggered this desire to expand writing out a little bit, but poetry was still this main focus. And as a 16-year-old, kid in the area I was in, in eastern Kentucky, I was more of a gothic, almost emo type kid, and that didn't slash metal kid, but very emotional kid. I'm a very emotional person, and I take no shame in that now. I guess you're reluctant about expressing that or saying that in some way when you're younger, but the poetry allowed me to do that. But a lot of that poetry was just about girls or about things of that time or about things I was being over dramatic about, but it was putting in work, and I I felt improvement, whether it was actually there or not, and I continued to write, and that was something I'd done. I wrote every day. I mean, every day. And you get to the point that I'm 19 years old. I would say, and I've always made this estimate, and I don't think it's an exaggeration. I think, if anything, if I tell you I had 1,000 separate writings at 19, I think that is being very conservative. Prolific, yes, possibly, you may say that, but the quality, I assure you, was not there. It's easy to get 1,000 of something that's not very, very good, so it's not a brag on the amount I had. It's just to be realistic and give you in perspective how much I was writing, even though most of it, if I were going to do anything with it, was less than spectacular. But by 18, I had 80-90% of that written, and my plans were for a poetry book. And this is not very creative, but you got to understand, I was 18 years old, and this, I can tell you the title of the book. The title of the book is The World the Way I See The World and the Way I See It by Justin Perkins. And I had these plans to do this and publish this, and the problem was I had this one fear at 18 years old, and that was that people would read what I had written. I wanted to be a published author. I wanted to write poetry, but I didn't want people to see what I'd written. That kind of scared me. I was embarrassed by what I had to say, and what was, just because, it's not cool to write poetry. That was the first thing come through my head, and at that time I worried about what other people think. I don't now, and I think it's very cool to write poetry now, but at that time, you're a kid, and you're influenced easily, and you allow things to sway you that you shouldn't. But also, I guess I was worried about people knowing too much about me, or, it being too personal. And so I sit on this for a long time, which the likelihood of getting something like that produced and published at that age was 0 to none. But either way, even if it had been a possibility, I sat on it. I got married, and when I got married, I don't know what it was. I felt as though those poems, I guess in some way, reflected a weakness in me, and I don't know why. And I was a very different person by the time I was married, even though it wasn't that far along. So between 19 and 20, I just quit writing. And by 20, I destroyed everything. I tossed it out, threw it away. I didn't want my wife to find it or my kids to read it. And I was like, and I completely and totally stepped away from writing. And, as years went on, I had some issues with very mild depression, and had some issues, just sometimes self-loathing, just different things of something doesn't feel right, and not feeling great, not feeling bad. I had a wonderful life, great marriage, daughter, everything was good, just didn't feel right in a certain level. And like I said, this was around 20 that this started, and I've quit writing. I've tossed all this out. I quit a lot of things I could do to express myself. I kept the music, and now I started writing some for the band again, but very little. Our guitar player for that last band, Bruce, I didn't expect Bruce, not because I didn't think Bruce was talented, just because I'd never seen Bruce express an interest. I didn't expect Bruce to attempt to do the writing and stuff. So, and I wasn't the lyricist. I wasn't the singer. So, when we didn't have a singer, I did write, some and would, not musically. I expected Bruce to do the musical end of it, but the lyrical end of it, kind of like to leave that to the singer when you can. But I did throw some out there, and before I really got a chance to throw a lot out there, Bruce starts coming in with lyrics to go with songs he's wrote, and they're really good. And so I just, the ideal of writing any more than what I had, it kind of wanes and fades away, because Bruce is writing very good songs. And I guess the ideal thing to do is to write things and try to write together, and even try to compete to some degree, because that makes everybody better. But I'm loving his song so much that doesn't even occur. I'm like, let's stick with this. So writing kind of stays out. I do a I guess you'd call it like a web TV show, like a web show on Ustream and back in the MySpace days with my drummer. Tyler, and that's the oral thing, and that gets that out, and I get to talk and discuss things and stuff. So that kind of helped, and that made me feel better for a little while. But I'm still not really writing. I'm still not writing poetry. I'm still not engaged at the level I was when I was a teenager. And a long time passes, and this kind of back to back. My uncle dies, and then a little bit of time goes by, and then grandfather dies, and my mom's really tore up. Other members of that family, a couple of them, not all, but it's a very small family. My aunt, my uncle's wife is distraught. Obviously she's had a rough go, and then two people very close to my mother are just monsters, and that's making it hard on my mother. And I start to really kind of get depressed for the first time in my life. I don't like my job. I don't like what I'm doing. I feel like I'm stuck. I'm living somewhere I don't want to live, somewhere I swore I'd never live, and I sure as hell would never die there. And in here, people are dying all around me, and I'm stuck there, and I'm doing something that's not exactly what I want to do, and all these things are happening, and people look at this differently when I tell this part of the story, and this is one of the beauties of my personality. A long time ago, even before I learned how to deal with my emotions as far as the depression, I learned to not give a crap what anybody thought, and I still don't. This is being as truthful as I can be to you. One day I'm watching Anthony Bourdain. I love Anthony Bourdain. I'm watching No Reservations, just kind of burning through these episodes of No Reservation. And I Googled something, and I'm reading some info about him, and I knew he'd wrote books and stuff, which I had not read, but I loved the show. I loved his personality. I loved everything he done. Both shows. I was a huge fan of both shows, and it's like he's like in his 30s, I think late 30s maybe, when he writes his first book. And I don't fact check this. I'm just looking at this. I'm like, wow. What makes you decide at that point in life to write a book? I mean, you've not been an author up till that point. Did he write the whole time? Why? And I kind of just lay that aside, and that just kind of stays in my mind. And then when I'm first getting big into podcasts, to me, the best podcast there is Joe Rogan. You never know who you're going to get, and he's very open-minded and across the board. He brings in all different types of people, and I was always intrigued, from the scientists to these doctors and all these people. And he brings in a lot of people too. They're just kind of motivational people that kind of doing better. There's this, I'm scrolling through YouTube, and there's this motivational video and various guests talking about doing what you want to do, and doing what you want to do, really just focusing on goals you have, and just not getting stuck, not hating the press, not feeling unfulfilled. And to me, that's something that really my attention. So these two ideals that I've come across kind of start to meld in my head. Okay, let me do and let me pursue these things. And man, at a later age, Anthony Bourdain just up. It's not about writing. He just up and changed his life and did what he wanted to do. Now this is kind of fast forwarding a little bit, because these two notions are very prevalent in my head now, and so it's a constant every day. What do I want to do? What do I want to happen? What do I want to do? And now let's go back about 6-7 months before this. About 6 or 7 months before this, I'm sitting at work. It's winter. It's cold out. I'm waiting on the company to get there. I do inspection. And here's this pen and this paper, and I'm thinking about my grandfather, and I'm something has happened with his wife, and between her and my mother. And, I'm not happy. I'm upset, and I'm angry, and I'm sad, and I'm thinking about my grandfather. And I just pick up this pen and paper, and I just write. For the first time since I was almost 20, I just write. But I write in a different way than I'd ever wrote before. And it comes out like poetry. And I think nothing about it. I shut this notebook back, and this notebook's, there's constant paper and notebooks in my truck. I'm writing down stuff for work, and keeping up with footages and all these different things at work. And this notebook, it's the first page of this notebook, and I just write in it and lay it to the side, and I don't really think about it. Goes by and I grab this in my head, and I don't know what it is. Nothing forms. I don't sit down to write poetry. When I sit down to write something, I don't sit down and go, okay, I'm going to write about this, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to follow this progression. I'm going to do these things. I'm going to write it this way. I just sit down and I write. And I can look at the writings and see a chaotic nature to them and see that they're not, to me, my poetry is nowhere near as good as 90% of the poetry I see. And, a lot of poetry takes time. A lot of poetry takes months to write, restructure this. I get it in my head. It explodes at one time without thought or forming or putting together or trying to make it be something, and it just comes out, and it is what it is. So I pick up this notebook, boom, another poem just kind of comes out, and the very next day it's 3, and I remember that there's 3 that come out. And so over the 6 months before I hear these 2 things, I'm just every day, I'm doing 2 things. I'm taking a lot of pictures at work, a lot of pictures of the area, rundown mining old camp houses and just destruction, just ruin, years of from this industry that's dying. I'm taking these pictures and I'm going through and I'm editing and I'm looking at these pictures just on my phone. I don't have a camera, anything of that nature. And I sit and look at these. I'm sitting and writing these poems all of a sudden again that are very personal and mean a lot. But then I'm getting these pictures, and I'm taking from these pictures, and I'm writing poetry about things that are around me, and out these pictures, just kind of, it's a field of interest I don't have. I'm not big on my mind. It's very prevalent in the area. It's very, I had family do it, but I never worked. I don't know anything about it. But these pictures, they do something. Excuse me. They do something to me, and they elicit an emotion from me, and they inspire me to do something, and they inspire this writing, and they inspire me to create, on this level about these things. And so I'm doing this. I'm writing again. I'm starting to feel 2 things. I'm starting to feel much, much better about myself, and my emotional state is improving, and all these negative emotions are getting put onto paper, and I feel like, to a large degree, I'm healing myself. The dissatisfaction with what I am and where I am in life, those things are still there, but that's kind of a separate deal, but I'm feeling better about what my daily emotional state is better. I'm writing these things, and I can't remember to what degree I let my wife read, maybe 1 or 2, but nothing, I'm not sharing these. These are kind of staying with me. And then I get a pretty good collection of 2 things. One, pictures, and the other, poetry. But the pictures have sparked this interest in the birth and life and death of the coal industry and what it did to the people and the region. What it did to the land and the landscape, and what it did to the people, and these companies that made millions and left. And so, the obvious thing pops in my head. let's make a book of this poetry. That's actually the last thing that popped into my head. The first thing that popped into my head was, let's make a documentary, because I really want to make documentaries. It's what I want to do. I have no technical skills, I have no camera skills, and I have no equipment. I want to make a documentary. And that's my desire. And I'm looking at it, and I buy this really cheap $100 camera. It's not what I need, but I'm trying to test this stuff, and I'm still writing every day. And I've done this now for years, a couple years. And just keep going back to, what am I going to do with these writings? I don't want to throw them away. I threw the last ones away, and I regret that every day. I wish I had them back to look back and see how I felt at that time. And, I'd like to have really tried to publish that book I wanted to publish when I was younger. And, I don't have the poetry now. I can't do it. And this new poetry that I've got that's really piling up doesn't cross my mind, And there's not as much of it, I only write now when it really hits me, when I really need to do it. It comes in these spurts, and I'm starting to read these poems, and they're not classics by no means, by no stretch of the imagination, but when I read them, I am very proud of them. Not on the level of their quality as much as the way I was able to say what I really felt, and that it made me feel good, and that I felt like I worked hard at it and did the best I could do with it. That there was a sense of pride in that. So I sat down. It's I'm writing every day, and I'm thinking this, and then we kind of, it's not really a layoff, just there's no work. And in the industry I'm in, I'm a contractor. A layoff is when there's really never going to be anything else again. These guys can send you all over the country if you want to get technical about it. So there's never really a layoff, but there's this lull in work. And it's winter, it's December, it's cold, going into January. And not going to work most of December, probably not going to work most of January. And here I am at home, a lot of free time on my hands, and I'm a night owl. I can't hardly sleep, even though it's I was up 5-something this morning due to work. I sit down and I'm just going crazy. I'm like, man, I'm going to start a YouTube channel. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to start a podcast. And I just happened to bring in these writings from the truck, and I'm going through these pictures, and I'm like, you idiot. There it is. There's the book. There's the book you wanted to write. And this one has photography to go with it, and let's do this. Let's write this book. Let's get this out there, and let's see if anybody's interested. If anybody wants it, if anybody will look at it, let's see. Because it's what you always wanted to do. So do it. There's nothing to stop you. At this point in time, there's no reason why. There's nothing to sit and say, no, I can't do that. Because if you got the time, and you don't have to use your name, and nobody has to even know about it. Nobody around here has to know about it. You write books, and they get huge, and you make plenty of money, and nobody, nobody's the wiser. And all these things are flooding through my head, and so I start sitting down and I type them all out, because at this point they're all in the book. They're all in this notebook, and well, they're not all. Some are in this notebook. By this point, I've switched, and I have a certain type of notebooks I like to have, and I quickly go through and I'm wanting to incorporate these pictures, so I narrow it down. Okay, I'm going to do the co-related poetry to go with the pictures, and then I'm going to throw some of the personal stuff in, and there you go. And when I write in the notebooks, I I don't know why. It's the way I do it. I don't throw punctuation in there. I don't, sometimes I struggle to read the words because my writing's so sloppy, so it takes a while to get these things typed out, and I type them out just the same way they go in the book. I don't like to tweak things and mess with things very much until you got to the personal ones, and some of those I started changing things on, which was a mistake, but I didn't know that at the time, but I was worried. Well, if anybody ever figures out it's me that wrote it, they'll know this is about this person, this is about that person. So it doesn't matter. If you feel it, write it. But I didn't know that at the time, So I changed a couple of things. I left out some poems that I really liked because I thought the worst thing for me that I could ever do was the first thing I done. What if somebody reads this and thinks this? Not, worried about my work and really getting it out there. Worried about what other people thought. And that was a mistake. So I'm sitting it and trying to put this thing together and getting the photos together and doing all this and typing it out and laying it out. And I was looking, I'm like, okay, this could work. Not a huge book. I don't want to take everything I've got written. I want to be very selective. Select the stuff that I think is the strongest for this book and start building a book. So I start building a book. I start sitting on the floor and handing stuff to my wife to read, getting her input on it, and putting it back into the pile and laying it out. And I've got it in an order and a structure the way I like. And then I'll go through the whole process again and redo it again and go through the structure and change it, let my wife read it. Okay, now I've got something. Okay, I'm not great with the punctuation and the various different aspects, but poetry is fairly fluid, and there's misspelled words, because when I printed these out, I didn't even go back and do, there's the big red lines where it's spelled wrong, like I've not went back now. I'm like, okay, here's the file of these writings. I've sat down and organized that into the ones I'm going to use. I give it to my wife. I might go through, just quickly go over, just correct the things that automatically ask you to correction, but then not structural stuff. Not, I send it to my sister-in-law. She's a teacher. I let her look over it. She sends me a file back. And, I'm watching YouTube videos on writing a book, and it's like, look, all these different things. I'm skipping these steps. When I decide to do something with this book, I want it basically to be ready to publish. And so that's what I focus on doing. I focus on getting this thing ready to publish. And I let people look at it and all this. And I've got two files. I've got revised file, and I've got my original file, and I'm leaving my original file on it, and I always go back, but I keep sending this revised file out to people and letting them look at it. And I send this revised file to a publisher. That's where we're going to pick up with part 2. I send it to a publisher. So it's into part 1, writing the book, and again, I'm like I said, I've got a headset on, not able to look at anything, having to pull over to start and stop recording on these things as I drive. So I can't, not pull up the email and stuff. But thank you to whoever it was that asked, and again, this is something that I get asked a lot, so it'll cover for a lot of people. But that'll be the end of part 1. Part 2 will pick up from there. I just went yesterday to the Red Spotted Newt in Hazard, Kentucky, the new bookstore. I believe it's going to open. I really believe 1st of February. They didn't give me a dead opening on that, but we went, looked at. They've got a huge shipment of books come in. They've got an unbelievable selection of books. Just some hand-picked stuff that she's picked out already on her own, and then this new shipment of new stuff that's come in. And I dropped off copies of every one of my books yesterday. And as of right now, and up till this point, no one's ever had them. But as of right now, unless something drastically changed, and it probably won't, for the next month or two, it's definitely not. If you ask me to put my book in your stores for the next month or two in your local, it's not going to happen, which I don't think I have to worry about that. It's never happened to this point. She very much wanted the book. She's going to have a very big emphasis on local artists, which I think is awesome. But as of right now, that's the only place you'll be able to get my books local. You don't have to mess with shipping and waiting, and this, you can literally go in there, pick it up, and leave with it. She asked me to do a reading, but I've got another book almost done, and I want to kind of wait for that. You kind of really just get one shot at those, and it's a big deal to me because this is my best friends doing this, and I really think a lot of her and her family, and I feel like my new book is better, and I don't want to go in and do it with the first book and not get to touch on this new book. I don't want to miss out the opportunity to do it with this new book. It would be awesome to do it with the old book because the old book means a lot to me. It was my first book, the poetry book, but I don't want to miss out on doing it with this new book as well. So I'm going to save that. You don't get very many opportunities like that in life, and I'm going to save that for the new book so that I can touch on both and deal with both. But really nice space and great looking, and she's got some great ideas. She's going to bring some authors in. I mean, I'm beyond excited. My wife and I got to look at everything yesterday, and this is somebody that my wife was really good friends with, and I was really good friends with. So it's important for me and my wife. It means a lot to us to see her succeed, but it's going to do great. This place is going to do great. So go check out Red Spotted Newt. Find them on Facebook. It's Red, R-E-A-D, Red Spotted Newt, and I really have a lot of high expectations for this place. I think it's going to do very well. But check it out on Facebook, and trust me, it's worth a look. All right, you guys come back for part 2, and we'll finish this thing.